Hey everybody, welcome back. Devin, original Grognard, Grognard's Corner, back at the Grognard's table. Yeah, so the Advanced Tobruk system playthrough of Pantherline, my live streams didn't go so well. A lot of technical difficulties with the live streams. Not sure I'm going to be doing a live stream again in the future. Maybe, we'll see. It's probably beyond my technical comprehension. And I swear to God, hills have been the bane of my existence in ATS and ASL forever and a day. And I think I finally got it. I sat down with a couple people. We noshed things out. And I think I understand hills now. And my setup in that last scenario, if I was going to take over or continue playing with the way LOS is supposed to be off the hills, I just had horrible setups. So I may return to that scenario in the future with the proper LOS and height, sight difference modifiers and all that good stuff. We'll see. Anyway, so we are now going to go ahead and jump into a game that is probably one of my top 5 games, and I've mentioned this several times in the past. Upfront. I absolutely love and adore Upfront. Released 1985, Avalon Hill. There was 2 expansions that were released for it: Desert War and Bonsai, and even a well-used player's copy of all 3 games together will probably run you about $200 if you wanted to try to buy them on the open market. Honestly, though, well worth it. As I said, one of my top 5 games. My top 5 games rarely ever change. Every once in a while, one might slide in or out. My top 10 games change on a regular basis, but my top 5 have always been Upfront, Advanced Tobruk System, Advanced Squad Leader, Fleet Series from Victory Games, and Gunslinger from Avalon Hill. Those 2 top 5 games have never changed. Now, that being said, with Upfront being one of my favorite games of all time, do not think that means I actually know how to play it real well. I have played this game, I think, 3 times in the last 20 years. Maybe 4 times in the last 20 years. Played it a lot more back in the 90s. It's kind of really got a small footprint, so I was able to play it a lot in the Navy and onboard ships. So it got a lot more play when I was in the service than when I've been out of the service. I could go on for a very, very long time about Upfront and all the minutia and all the cool things that go along with it. I did actually do a podcast episode a couple years back on Upfront. I may dig up that link and put the link in the bottom. I'll have to go back and listen to it to see how bad Upfront is. But basically, Upfront was probably one of Avalon Hill's best games. They call it it has the subtitle of the Squad Leader card game, which is kind of a misnomer because you hear the Squad Leader card game, it makes you think, well, it's the card game for Squad Leader. No, it's the 2 games. The only similarity between the 2 games is that they're both World War II. Whereas Squad Leader is each unit is a squad, in Upfront each unit is an individual man. And as you can tell, there are no boards with Upfront. It is an abstract card-driven system, not a set hex system like Squad Leader is. And there's no mechanics in Upfront that translate to Squad Leader, and vice versa, what have you. However, it's still a great game. Now, if you're interested in getting Upfront, but don't want to spend the $200+ to get yourself a good copy, Wargamers Vault. Wargamers Vault managed to get their hands and were able to reprint the entire base system, and I believe they also released Desert War and Bonsai, so you can actually still get all 3 of the games through Wargamers Vault for a relatively decent price. The nice thing is, the action cards, we'll get into those into a little bit, had a few of them had a little mistakes on it. Upfront took the masters, fixed those mistakes. So the cards that you get from Wargame Vault are actually pure, clean, up to date with the, well, I can't say latest errata because, as most Avalon Hill games, it got gobbled up by Hasbro, and Hasbro hasn't done shit with it since then. So there is really, the only errata is the quote-unquote living errata, and you can find it on Board Game Geek. If you don't want to go that route, then go over to Board Game Geek, and literally you could spend hours going through the files that people have come up with and created and crafted. You could basically download the entire game, even the rules, I think, and the counters that have been completely redone, remastered. Okay, admittedly, you know, this is an original Trooper card. Front, back, I've actually had mine laminated. I've laminated most of them. I still think I have the Italians, British, and French, or Italians, British, and French I still need to laminate, or maybe it's the Japanese, I don't know. 3 of the nationalities I still need to laminate. But you know, it's a serviceable, or they're serviceable cards, but a lot of people have done a lot of really fantastic graphical upgrades to it. Not only that, they've expanded the army list. There's, people have come up, Hungarian army lists, the SS, the Fallschirmjägers, you name it. If it was a combatant in World War II, somebody's probably done up cards and rules for it, for up front. Huge community, huge following. And like I said, you could spend hours downloading all the different cards, even the action cards. People have gone back through the action deck and graphically remastered them. Now, if you want to print them out on like cardstock and laminate them, yeah, you're going to be paying a little bit, but still cheaper than trying to go out and buy, an original box set up front with the 3 gamettes. And with that way, you can kind of mix and match what you like. Also, there's a really good Vassal mod, and the guy who is the keeper of the Vassal mod, I can't remember his name. And I apologize about that. I probably should have looked it up before I did the podcast. Is continually updating the Vassal mod with new nationalities, new artwork. So if you want to grab the Vassal mod, join the Upfront Facebook group. There is an Upfront Facebook group, and this is going to be posted there. So take a look there. He always updates his work that he's doing. I've always been a little bit hesitant about doing Upfront, mainly because, yeah, it is one of my favorite games, but as I said, I suck at it, and that the rules, I'm not 100% tight on the rules. You've seen how I am with Advanced Tobruk System. And the Advanced Tobruk System is probably the game that I'm the tightest to rules on, and with the last couple of videos we've seen, even there are glaring holes in that system for me with it. So yeah, there are holes in my knowledge with this one. There have been a lot of people that have been asking for upfront how to plays on the Upfront Facebook group. I've been kind of hesitant to do them because I lack the articulation, I think, to be able to do a how to play video. So we're going to put this up. We're going to get some feedback. We're going to see how people like it and what people want more. And we might, if I get some convincing, I might do some actual, sit down and how to play videos. One of the problems with the game, and it's a mid-1980s Avalon Hill release, and like most early and mid-80s Avalon Hill releases, the rule book is a fucking disaster. Oh, it's laid out clear and concise, and it's got a great programmed instruction. So you just, learn the game a little bit piece by piece by piece. However, how the rules are actually written, the rules themselves, how they're written, are, as vague clusterfuck can be. Anybody who's got any experience with Avalon Hill games of the early to mid 80s will know exactly what I'm talking about. It's like one perfect example I use is Gunslinger, the game Gunslinger. In the game Gunslinger, each character has 5 action points. Now today, you say 5 action points, it's like, all right, well, that's a pretty simple concept to understand. You get 5 action points to use during the turn. But Gunslinger takes 2.5, pages to try to explain action points. It's overly wordy and overly thought out. It's just the way it is. But it's one of those games, if you get shown to you once, then everything starts clicking. Up front is the same way. I had no friggin' clue what I was doing the first couple times I played up front. Met up with a guy when I was stationed in Japan over at Morale, Welfare, and Red, because, you know, that's where the gamers used to go a lot of times when we were in port, and we played a lot of games over there. I ran into a guy who knew how to play up front, and he showed me, and a lot of mechanics started falling into place. Read it in the rule book, didn't grasp it so much. See it played on the table, all right, now I understand it. And I think that's one of the big impediments that a lot of people run into with up front, is that just the way the rules are written. Yeah, like I said, it's got a great programmed instruction system to it, so it carefully steps you up. However, how those are written sometimes makes it a little bit harder for people to understand. And I will go ahead and right now and say the one thing that people have the hardest time with is the relative range rules. Because Upfront is an abstract game with no hexes or anything like that, you have to have some type of abstract way of being able to measure how far a unit away from each other. And take a look at this card right here. If you notice, you've got range and firepower. Basically, the closer you are to somebody, by the higher your relative range is, the more firepower the individual soldier will be able to generate, hence the more damage you'll possibly do to the enemy. So if you're like at relative range 0, this Private Schultz with a bolt-action rifle generates 0 firepower. He's not going to get anybody. You're going to have to get closer, you know, relative range 1 or 2, then you've got 1 firepower. Relative range 3 and 4, you've got 2 firepower, and the relative range 5, which is basically right on top of each other, is, you know, firepower 3. However, how this is represented through the use of the movement cards and terrain cards and these counters right here, everybody starts off, all groups start off at relative range 0. Every time you take a step forward towards somebody, the relative range, or the range bracket, goes up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You can actually go into negatives as well. And it is kind of cool because, you know, you've got, you know, relative range 0. You're looking down the sight of the rifle. You can't really see anything. Relative range 1. Okay, maybe there's a little something closer. You know, relative range 2. Okay, yeah, that looks like there's a human figure out there. Relative range 3. Yeah, now you're getting to see him a little bit better. You know, relative range 4. Yeah, now we can see him real well. Relative range 5, yeah, you're right on top of each other. So that was always cool that they did that, but how they explained it, I always had, and I think a lot of people have the hardest time trying to comprehend the relative ranges, because as you get closer to each other, the relative as you close the distance, the relative range increases. It's an ass-backward system. Always has been an ass-backward system, but it is what it is. Now, what I came up with, and I actually got this from Board Game Geek. Again, Board Game Geek, great resource for people who want to pick up. I go to every time I get ready to do a game, I go to Board Game Geek to see if there's any new maps that I want to print. I did this with Wolfpack, the strategy and tactics magazine game. You know, I did a few months back. I didn't like the base map, so I went to Board Game Geek, got a map that somebody had redone. This is a relative range chart that really helps me visualize things more, and it's an abstract. But basically, you have these range bands, and you have 7 range bands, and each group, and as you can kind of see, you have your groups. Whenever you play, you can have up to 4 groups, anywhere from 2 to 10 people in them. And so, you know, this would be Group A, Group B, Group C. Conversely, Group A, Group B, Group C. And so I should probably take off the Group D markers, because we don't have a Group D on here unless I decide to, you know, laterally transfer some soldiers over. But basically, every time you move forward, normally you just take the 0, you flip it to a 1, You look at what the other opponent's range is, do some fancy math in your head that I was never able to figure out, and that'll give you your relative range. Hardest concept to understand is that relative range. There is a little relative range card that they give you that, all right, if you're at band such and such, your opponent's at band such and such, then this is the actual range you're at. It's helpful, but I actually prefer more of a visual aid. So I have this right here. Again, I downloaded this off of Board Game Geek. Ignore the graphics for it. The terrain on the board does not represent any actual terrain that the actual groups in game are on. It's just background graphics. But basically, how to figure out what range you're at? You take your group, and then you count out how many spaces. Or you start at 5. Again, this is the ass backwardsness of it. Start at 5, and for each space you go, subtract 1 from that number until you hit where the enemy group is at. So we got Group A here. So we want, and say we want to figure out how far we are to enemy Group A. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. All right, we're at range band 0. We use the 0 range, 0 firepower. And of course, you know, you've got crew support weapons at range 0. This Sturmgewehr, or the Sturmgewehr Maschinengewehr or Dretzig has, you've got these two numbers. One of with the bracketed number is if the gunner is firing it by himself. The unbracketed number is if he's got a crew assisting him. So at range band 0, he'd have 4 firepower. If he was by himself, he'd have 2 firepower. And you can always tell if there's a crewed weapon is that you just have a normal rifleman next to the crewed weapon, and you put the crewed marker on it. And the crew, the loader, basically, he can't add his firepower in. He still has his weapon, but he can't add his firepower in. So as you move towards each other, say Group A advances 1 band, and then Soviet Group A advances 1 band. Now you want to figure out what range band you're at. 5, 4, 3, 2. Okay, now you're at range band 2. You take a look, range band 2. Now my guy generates 1 firepower. And we'll take a look at the light machine gun. Range band 2 generates 6 firepower. Alright, so as you're getting closer, and then, you know, conversely, you keep moving forward. Say he moves forward, and then the Soviets move forward. 5, 4. Now you're at range band 4. Now, when you get next to each other like this, you can never move into the same space of a group that's in front of you. If for some reason you manage to kill that group, eliminate every last soldier, break them around, and whatever, then you continue moving on. But as long as that group is in front of you, you cannot move any further. Now, you can move backwards if you want, like, say, Group A, if it wanted to, could move backwards. Groups also cannot move laterally. You can transfer individual units. You know, you could transfer, you know, a soldier from this group to this group, or this group to this group. You know, as long as they're adjacent to each other, you can transfer soldiers as long as the 2 groups are at the same range band together. So, in this example, Group A and Group B could transfer soldiers back and forth, but if Group B was at 1 and A was at 2, since they're not adjacent to each other, they could not transfer troops. So the best you're ever going to get is a range band 5, and that is if you're right next to each other. Now, at this point, there are infiltration rules and melee rules, close combat rules, all that good stuff, and that gets real fun. But that right there has always been the biggest impediment to a lot of people learning up front, is just the actual relative range, because it is an ass-backward system. So, like I said, I like this little chart right here. So, wherever the groups are, okay, what is band A at? What's their 5, 4, 3? All right, bam. And conversely, 5, 4, 3. So, this has been a huge help to me. It has sped my games up a lot. It just makes things easier. Yes, there is a mathematic formula that they present in the rule book, but I'm not a smart enough man to understand it, so I've always struggled with it. If you want to play up front, if you have problems with relative range, download this, use tokens, whatever, what have you. Every time one of your groups moves, just shift whatever, if they move forward, if they move back, whatever. It'll make your life a hell of a lot easier. Okay, that being said, let's take a look at the anatomy of a card. And we've already kind of seen a few things here. This is soldier number 2, and the numbers are important because a lot of the scenarios will give which soldier numbers to use. So, for example, assaulting a fortification, the U.S., if they were the defender, would use troopers 1 through 8, 10, and 12. If they were on the attack, they would get troopers 1 through 9, 12, 16, 25, and 1 demolition charge. And conversely, it's the same for all of them. When they came out with, and there were, 6 scenarios? No, 8, 6, 9, 6, 12 scenarios when the original game came out. When Bonsai and Desert War came out, they added more scenarios, obviously, and they fortunately also gave you, it's like, all right, these are the guys you use if you want to do the first scenario, which is the scenario I've set up, which is patrol. Use these guys. And normally it's like the first 10, 15, 16 troopers in the stack. And there are a bunch of others. I mean, because basically right now we've got a couple guys with Messerschmitt MP40s or 38s. Yeah, 38s. Those are squad leader, advanced squad leader. Bunch of Lansers with Kar 98s and the MG43. The Soviets are pretty much broken down. Most of their guys are Mazan Nagats. The basic Soviet riflemen with Mazan Nagat. You got the DP-28 machine gun, and I think the squad leader has... Yeah, the squad leader for the Soviets. He's got an actual semi-auto Tokarov. Yeah, is that a Tokarov? Yeah, Tokarov. So slightly better. They don't have machine pistols like the Germans do. But, in other cards, there's a German Panzerschreck, another MG. That's an MG 40 or 34 on a tripod. Flammenwerfen, Sturmgewehrs, light anti-tank weapons. You just got a whole host. Gewehr 36, and then of course you've got, Pak 36s, Pak 38s, and so you got a whole host of different troop types. And one of the nice things is this game mainly is a design your own, or it can be done design your own, and they have point values on them. So, like if we have this guy right here, let's see, number 2, Corporal Heschel. This is basically his close combat value. ASL means he's assistant squad leader. Machine pistol, that's the breakdown number. If you draw a red 6 with the action deck, then there's a possible breakdown. And then you've got the range and the different firepowers, and then their morale. And the points, that's how much it costs for design your own. And then his killed in action number. Sorry, allergies still getting to me. And then you have his pen side, which has got his panic, his close combat, his killed, any special notes about it, reduced hand capacity if he's the squad leader, and rout or panic. We'll get into that a little bit later. And there are vehicles. Each nationality has vehicles. You play more in the game in their scenarios. So, here's German half-track, Puma, Panzer III, Panzer IV, Panther, King Tiger, Panzer II, just a whole bunch of Stug, whole plethora of vehicles. And of course, the Americans got half-tracks and Greyhounds, Stewarts and Shermans and Easy 8s. And then Soviets, they got an M3 half-track and Shukar, T-26, T-34s, KV-1s, and then the British have got their Matildas and their Brin carriers and, Fireflies. The Japanese, for what the Japanese tanks are, Type 32s or Type 95s, 97s. And then, the Italians, they've got their vehicles, again, as much as they can be called vehicles. And then the French with their char. And I think there's even yeah, Char B1 Bis. So yeah, you've got a plethora of vehicles you can play with. Not all of them are used in the scenarios, but they are used for design your own. Oh, we're hitting the 25-minute mark, so I'm going to go ahead and pause and be right back, and it'll be like, yeah, I never left. See, like I never left. So, anyways, you decide on what scenario you're going to play, and that'll determine which card you get. Unless you're doing a design your own, then both sides decide on how many points they want to play with, and then they throw out their groups, and you're kind of good to go. Now, as I said, this doesn't use a board. This is an abstract system, and it uses an action deck. That big-ass deck of cards there that I've all got sleeved because my copy is close to 30 years old, and as well as the cards are, after 30 years, they don't stand up real well. I was playing down, one of the last times I played it, 4, 5, 6 years ago, I was down at a local game store playing with a good buddy of mine, a friend of mine who's a lieutenant colonel in the Army. And I am very, very careful with my cards. I don't like shuffling them. Now, these cards, they weren't ever really designed to stand up, so they're your standard playing card size, but they're not fiber weave woven, and you don't want to put a lot of stress on them. And so this kid was kind of watching, and then he grabbed the action deck and started, thumb shuffling. It's like, no, dude, do not fucking do that. These cards are older than you are. I hated to snap at them like that, but, I also want to preserve my cards. Now, I will say the cards that you get from Wargame Vault are fiber woven, really good, plain deck size cards. So honestly, if you want to get a better deck of cards, go with the stuff from Wargame Vault. But anyways, so this is the action deck, and probably mine's bigger because I do have them sleeved and such, but this is the core of the game. Each player gets a hand of cards depending on the nationality. Germans get 5, Russians get 4, Americans get 6, and I can't remember what the other nationalities get because I don't play them. And basically, every turn, whenever it's your turn, you can do one event with each one of your groups. So you got 3 groups out there. So the Soviets will be able to play 3 or do 3 actions, 1 action with each group. And the cards basically will determine what you do. So let's go ahead and take a look at some of these cards. Now, this right here is kind of the most important card in the game because it's the movement card. Is how you move. Basically, if you want to move a unit, you'll take a movement card from your hand and place it in front of your group, plus side forward if you want to advance, but if you want to do a retrograde, move back, use the minus side. So you play the movement card. That'll increase your relative range, and then of course you make sure to mark the respective group that moved forward. Pretty simple. And like I said, you can only play one of these cards per group per turn. So movement is a big one that you'll always want to play. The other card that's really important in gameplay is a fire card. This is if you want to shoot at somebody to try to do bad things to them. Now, to play a fire card, you take a look at this number in the circle, and that's how much firepower your group has to generate to be able to shoot at the enemy. So let's take a look at this group. Let's say it's the next turn. These guys go ahead and decide that they want to shoot. So they play them, and probably I would check this beforehand to make sure I had the firepower. But I'd look at the relative ranges, say the Soviets didn't change their range any. So I'm going to figure out what range we're at. It's 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, so we're range band 1. There is rules for you to fire at other groups, but I'm not going to get into that right now. It basically extends the range out by 1. So we're at relative range 4, so we take a look at all of our troopers. Or no, we're relative range 1. So the machine pistol generates 0 firepower, and the 3 carbine guys only generate at range 1 firepower each. So that group only generates 3 firepower, which is not enough firepower for the 4. Oh, I will also say, if they were actually still moving, these guys' firepower would be halved. So let's go ahead and let's play this card over here instead. Okay, so we take a look at the relative ranges. Group C to Group C, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Okay, we're relative range 0. So the one rifleman, 0 firepower at range 0, but the machine gun, the MG42, has got 4 firepower when he has a crew member with him, and that 4 firepower, that's what we needed to generate. So this card can actually be played on this group. Now, what does that mean now that we've generated that firepower? Well, then you take a look at this number right here, and that's the base number you run off of to start figuring out how combat works. I'm not going to get into that right now, but I just wanted to just want to point out that the circle number is how much firepower the squad has to generate. The fire 2 is the actual numbers you're going to be looking for when you do damage to the enemy squad. Alright, so movement and fire. Those are 2 of the biggest cards you're going to see in the game. And there are some pretty hefty, here's a fire 14. The squad needs to generate 14 firepower to be able to do a fire 6 strike on the enemy unit. Now I will point out there is a whole bunch of notes usually at the bottom. Half fire strength for moving fire, night fire, assault gun must be non-moving to fire, ordnance, yada yada yada, and then a whole bunch of different numbers down here. Since there is no dice, sometimes you need to randomly determine which position is hit. So like if you're using a sniper on a group and it's got 6 guys, so you draw a card, there's 6 guys, and that'll tell you, all right, guy 6 gets hit. Or, for example, say using this card, 6 guys in the squad, 5th guy gets hit. So these are just random number generators. And yes, the red and the black actually do mean some. Red is a negative modifier, black is a positive modifier. You'll see these numbers up here. Since there is no dice rolling, every time you need to generate a number, you draw a card and look in the upper right-hand corner. So that is a red 1, which would be a -1. This is a black 6, so it'll be a +6. This is a black 2, it'll be a +2. So anyways, that's how you generate numbers. Another common card that you want to have in your hand is the concealed card. When someone is shooting at you, you can throw this card on the unit that's getting shot at, and that -1 will actually take away from their fire strength. So, using our previous example, the squad with the machine gun generated a fire 2. The defender throws a concealed card, which is a -1, that takes that 2 down to a 1. And there's a lot of things that will modify that. Big one is movement. If you see the movement card right here is a +1. If you're shooting at a card that has or a unit that has movement cards on it, you get +1 for each movement card. Let's find a terrain card, because terrains are really important as well. Alright. So you got a terrain card, and if the circle, if the number is circled, that's what the person in the terrain, they get their modifier. So if you're on the hill, you get +1 to your firepower. If you're shooting at someone on the hill, if it doesn't have a circle around it, you take away from it. So say if this unit was on the hill, these guys were firing at it, so we generated the 2 firepower. We had the concealed card, which is a -1, so that'd be now a 1. And they're sitting on a hill, which is a further -1, so the firepower then would be 0. And there's a lot of different modifiers that go into figuring out what the final firepower strength that you're throwing at a group is. But then you've got rally cards, which will allow you to rally your pinned troops, and sometimes you'll see there'll be a little moniker right here along the side, and sometimes with a nationality by it. So that's basically an American nationality. So they could use this as a radio card, which is used for off-board artillery. Don't see that very often. Let's see if we can find another one. Here's another one. It's a Rally 1 radio, but anybody can use it as a radio because it doesn't have a nationality symbol next to it. Okay, here's a split card. There's a split card. It's a Rally 4 or a concealment card, but if you look at it, it also denotes the nationality. The Soviets can use it as a concealment card. The Germans and Americans can use it as a Rally 4 card and a radio card. Another one, smoke card, This is another split action card. Smoke, Soviets, this is the symbol for cower. So, and a cower card is basically worthless. It can't do anything. So, Soviets never use smoke, at least in a large enough value or squad level. Soviets never use smoke, so any smoke cards you're going to see are split cards. Soviets treated as a cower card. US and Germans treated as an actual smoke card. Then you've got sniper cards. You can play a sniper card to try to snipe someone individually. And you know, there are other types of terrain cards. Stream cards. Usually you want to throw stream cards on the opponent. You can actually discard. You can play terrain cards on an opponent unit that is moving. Now, normally terrain cards are good because they help you hide, but there are things like stream, marsh, wire, minefields that you throw on your opponent that aren't good. And then you've got a wall card, and a wall card is kind of special because it gives you a -2 if you're firing directly across, but it's only a -1 if it's a group that's adjacent that's firing to you. And then, you know, here's a minefield card. Yeah, you want to play that on an enemy. And, you know, it's just hero card can be used for a couple different things, and they can be played at any time, even during your opponent's turn. So that's basically a look at the action deck, and the action deck is kind of the core of the game. As like I said, you get X amount of cards, and each group can play a card each turn. And that's basically how you play the game. Depending on the scenario special rules, you may have other things in it. Normally, there is a single victory condition, or you play to break in the opponent's morale. Usually, if you can rout or kill at least 50% of the opponent's side, that'll be usually a win. But, so for the first scenario that we're going to be playing, you know, meeting of patrols, first side, German always has the first side, and this little hourglass is how many, I don't want to say turns, but it's how many times you go through the action deck. So you go through the action deck once. When it's all gone, you reshuffle all the discards back in, and you go through the deck 3 times, and that's basically how long the game is. Most games are usually 3 decks long. I don't recall shorter or longer, but there might be some special ones out there. But anyway, so the U.S., they get cards number personalities 1 through 12. Germans get 1 through 10. Russians get 1 through 15. Special rule, remove the first 5 building cards to be discarded unused or as a random number draw. So basically, the first 5 buildings that we come across automatically are discarded. And then special rules, the pillbox and minefield cards are treated as cower cards. So any pillbox or minefield cards we come across are counted as worthless. And then victory conditions, the first player to have at least 4 unpinned personality cards in 1 or more non-infiltrated groups, range chit 4. So that means these chits, their range has to be range 4. So, more than likely, you're going to have to try to fight your way through, kill off a unit, and fight your way through to get to range band 4. Occupying a terrain card that will reduce the fire strength of the attacker against them as the winner. And if you see here, design yourself, the value of this is 241 points. So if you wanted to make up your own squads using this scenario, then you have 241 points to play with. Pretty easy, pretty self-explanatory in the scenarios. Like I said, the biggest thing that people run into is trying to figure out the relative ranges. This right here is the biggest pain in the ass game mechanic I have ever discovered in my life. And I've played Starfleet Battles. I've played Advanced Squad Leader. I have played some pretty Europa Universalis. You know, the big monster. Hell, I even played Campaign for North Africa once. Relative range is the most overly complicated system I've ever run into, period. So anyways, that's a brief overview of the game. And like I said, we're going to be playing this out, but I don't want to start it today. I did want to give kind of a base overview and get this up and see what people thought, what they would like me to focus on most. And of course, you know, as I go through and play the game, I will be explaining mechanics and such. But I just wanted to get this up because it's been a couple weeks. I kind of got really depressed after how badly the live streams with the ATS system went. So I had to take a little bit of a break, but I'm back now. So hopefully within a couple 3 days I'll be able to get start getting the gameplay videos of this up. But like I said, after I see what people want me to focus on, because I know there is a demand out there for how to play and how it's played, and I can't give you too much deep into the tactics side of it because, like I said, I played like 3 or 4 times in the last 2 decades. I don't have the tactics down. The rules, I'm pretty firm on the rules, but that's what we got. Questions, comments, concerns, complaints, criticisms in the comment section, and I will see everybody later. See ya!